Now, the US Secretary of State has taken a swipe at what he described as modern-day tyranny. The foreign policy message came in a tweet by Mike Pompeo about the 74th anniversary of D-Day during World War II. That's when US and Allied troops landed in Normandy to liberate Western Europe from Nazi forces. Well, the Secretary of State referred to D-Day as the turning point in the fight against the Nazis, not mentioning, though, the Soviet Union's immense contribution to the victory. And Pompeo also chose not to elaborate on what countries he sees as tyrannical in the modern world. Earlier, State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert also made an awkward comment, using the D-Day landings as an example of the long-standing relations between the US and Germany.
When you talk about Germany, we have a very strong relationship with the government of Germany. Very strong relationship. Looking back in the history books, today is the 71st anniversary of the speech that announced the Marshall Plan. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the D-Day invasion. We obviously have a very long history with the government of Germany.
OK, well, let's get the thoughts now of independent journalist Luke Rivet, who's with us this evening. Hello to you, Luke. I'm not sure if you heard that comment there from the State Department spokesperson, but she basically underlined the relations between America and Germany, using D-Day as an example, a strange example to use.
Well, she should review her courses in geography and, above all, in history and in diplomacy. Because, of course, on D-Day, the Germans were on the wrong side and the Americans on the good side. But what strikes me in Pompeo's remark and her remark, too, is the fact that they seem to believe, like we do in the West very often, that we won the war full stop, forgetting the Red Army. If you look at the number of victims, of soldiers who were killed during the war, it's 8.7 million for the Red Army, while the Americans, as a whole, for the whole war, lost only 400,000 men. So it's 21 times more than the American casualties. And, of course, you had 10 million Russians who died in the war. So it's terrible. And the real victors of the Second World War is clearly the Soviet Union. And, of course, the Americans helped. They are the second pillars, let's say, of the Allies, but the second one, not the first. Sorry, folks. That's one thing. By the way, Heather, as it is the charming name of that spokesperson for the State Department, got one thing right. It is that we also have the anniversary of the Marshall Plan, which was a balloon of oxygen for Western Europe that brought the economy back, in shape after the terrible war that we had gone through. So, clearly, she has to review her things, and she should not be the spokesperson for the State Department, for God's sake.
One thing that Mike Pompeo also said or referred to was modern-day tyrannies, but he didn't sort of go on to expand who might that include. Why do you think that was, and perhaps any guesses who do you think he was referring to?
Well, you don't have many words on a tweet, huh? His boss knows that, but Mr. Pompeo is new at tweeting. So maybe he didn't really want to say what he said, but of course he doesn't tell us what are the present-day tyrants. Iran, we guess yes, but are the Europeans his allies against Iran? I'm not so sure today, since the Europeans sent a letter to Washington saying that they disagreed and that the sanctions should be reviewed. And you don't know, maybe the tyrants of today for Mr. Pompeo include Russia, why not, or China. So it is really unclear and not welcome, I think, his remarks. At least he got it right. I mean, it was the Americans against the Germans on D-Day.
Sure. Is it strange that we have sort of Secretary of States? I know Donald Trump does it a lot, but now the Secretary of State is taking to Twitter to make these sort of remarks. You don't see them from other politicians so much from other countries. Is this just an American thing, do you think?
I think it's an American thing, though, of course, you see Emmanuel Macron and others starting to tweet as well and send messages on social media in a much more relaxed way, much more than before. So I suppose it will spread around the world. But the language of diplomacy is also changing because of Mr. Donald Trump's nominations. I mean, she also mentioned Heather, the charming lady of the State Department. She also mentioned Mr. Grenell, the new ambassador to Berlin, of the US to Berlin, and his remarks about boosting conservatives in Germany, I think that's also undiplomatic. You know, it shouldn't be like that. I mean, diplomacy should be neutral, and you can be influential with a few words, like, for example, the King of Sweden or the King of Belgium or the British royal family are also spokespersons that can defend the country without having to say it plainly, brutally, as Mr. Grenell just said a few days ago in Germany.
Sure, OK, interesting stuff. Look, Luke, we're going to have to leave it there, but nice to talk to you. That was independent journalist Luke Rivet. Thank you.